Previously on Chaos Head Noah, I felt the sudden urge to ask her something. I wanted to ask. Back when we met in front of 107, what did it look like to you? Considering the fact that she hadn't mentioned anything in particular, it seemed like she didn't know anything about the people temporarily disappearing from the streets of Shibuya, nor anything about the wheelchair-bound Shogun. Which would probably mean it'd just been one of my delusions after all. No, I'm sure it was real. That was why I wanted to ask her. But I didn't think I'd be able to look up and do so after all this time. Either way, I couldn't do it today. I couldn't even prepare myself to ask her. What the heck? I noticed a white chain lying on the street. I couldn't see the end of it because it was concealed by the legs of various pedestrians, but it seemed to be stretching from where I was standing all the way to the other side of Scramble Crossing. What the hell? It was a ridiculously long chain. Was it for construction or something? But there was no evidence of construction going on anywhere. I couldn't believe they left a chain lying around like this. Was this a location they were shooting at for some movie or TV show? No, they wouldn't be filming at a time as crowded as this. If these were normal circumstances, I'd think it was some kind of trap. After which, I would have run away in fear, suspecting that something terrifying might have been waiting for me. But now, for whatever reason, I couldn't help but wonder where the chain led. My mind was overtaken by a compulsive obsession that told me I had to follow this chain. I crossed the Scramble Crossing before the light turned red, bumping into several pedestrians as I did. At the end of the continuous chain was an old, dark green train car that was sitting next to the Hachiko statue. The wheels had been removed, so it was closer to a monument or an exhibit rather than a functional train car. You were supposed to be able to enter it freely, too. I automatically stopped dead in my tracks. What if she got up and attacked me with a D-sword right at this very moment? The very thought scared the hell out of me. Giving in to my fear, I began to follow Sena's order. I took one step into the train car, but right as I did, I immediately reconsidered. That was exactly what Sena would want me to do. A moth to the flame, a fly to a spider's web. I couldn't do that. How could I waltz right in on my own death like that? I should run away. That was a much better idea. From the chain, it was easy to tell that this girl had some completely absurd, superhuman strength. With just a single twist of her arm, I'd get helplessly pinned to the ground, and she would break my arm right after. And that wouldn't be the end of it. She had a D-sword. If I were to be slashed with a sword that thick and gigantic, I would die instantly. This girl was lying in wait for me. She was plotting something. Run away. Now! I turned on my heel to get off the train. But without me noticing it, the exit had closed.
人は体の外からの情報を五感によって得ているけど、その受け取る情報のおよそ 80% は視覚から入ってくるんだ。そして視覚から得られた映像はパルス信号となって視神経を通り脳に送られる。
Just like the telephone, I thought to myself absent-mindedly. A telephone converted your voice into electrical signals, and then sent that information to a distant location.
電話か。似ていると言えなくもない。
Had you just read my mind? No. There was no way. Had I been mumbling to myself out realizing it yet again?
VR 技術を知っているか？
Virtual reality, right? What? Virtual reality? Of course, I didn't actually answer her aloud.
ビジュアルリビルディング。
Huh. I was wrong. I never heard of that.
アメリカの精神生理学分野で研究が行われている技術だ。生まれながらに目が不自由な人でも目の前にある景色がちゃんと見えるようになる。ビデオカメラのような映像機器を介してな。すでに実際にテストは成功している。ある研究チームが特許を取得済みだ。
It was patented? Seriously? I thought that was just a fairly hardcore delusion with an impressive amount of depth and detail behind it, but claiming there was a full-on patent was taking it way too far.
その特許から読み取れることがある。
Sena, who had been looking out the window the whole time, turned to face me. She slowly crossed her legs.
ある意図的な情報を神経パルスへコンバートすることが可能なら、人の五感すべて、さらには人の意志そのものもコントロールできるんじゃないか。無知は罪だ。知らない方が幸せなこともあるという人間もいるが、そんなのはただの甘えだ。世界を疑え、仕組みを知れ。この世界は完璧じゃない。
She was coming toward me. Thinking she might hit me, I tried to shield my face with my arm, but in the end, she slipped right past me without doing anything.
お前の見ている景色は本物か？
Without looking at me, she murmured that as we passed each other. And then, she promptly exited the train by herself. Before I knew it, the door exiting the train opened as silently as when it had closed. I was completely and utterly bewildered. I stared out the window as Sena walked away. Without looking back at me even once, she quickly disappeared into the sea of people. In the end, I had absolutely no clue as to what she'd been trying to tell me. The only thing I took from it was that Sena despised the world. Typical Chunibu.
特許本当に認められてる。
So, did that mean that what Sena had said wasn't just some Chunin delusion? It would just seem so? I gulped, then went to open the other text file. I began reading. Presidential Documents, Memorandum of March 27, 1997. Strengthened protections for human subjects of classified research. The agencies shall jointly propose to prohibit waiver of informed consent for classified research, part of it said. Beginning 1 year after the date of this memorandum, no agency shall conduct or support classified human research without having proposed and promulgated the common rule, said another. The document was then signed at the bottom by William J. Clinton, enclosed with the White House, Washington, March 27, 1997. Now, it was starting to get somewhat difficult to understand at this point, but with what Sena told me, combined with the sources we found online that backed her up, it sent chills down my spine. I had a feeling that something terrible was lurking within. But what confused me the most was what Sena's true intentions were in telling me all this. Did it have anything to do with me? The part about being able to control people's free will definitely wasn't something I could dismiss as somebody else's problem, because there was the possibility that I was a sleepwalker. On the day of the third New Gen incident, the Crew Fiction, I had been told that I had been posting in a chat room as Shogun. Apparently, I posted from @Cafe too, but I had no memory of any of it. And not only that, but I had absolutely no memory of Rimi too. We had been classmates for over a year, and we had been close enough to hang out on multiple occasions, yet I had no memory of any of it. And so it continues. Greetings, my name is Neosekken, and welcome back to my Let's Play of Chaos Head Noah. So, everything that happened in the last episode is still very fresh in my mind, and I am very eager to look more into this VR research that we've just learned about. And how it relates to everything that's going on with New Gen and this Project Noah business, because I am convinced that it absolutely has something to do with both of them. I need more info. Give me the info. Fill my brain with knowledge. I also just want validation to see if any more of my speculation as to what might be going on here whenever I voice it turns out to be true, because I like being proven right. It gives me an ego boost. Anyway, I see you be typing on something and it looks like an email? Good evening. This is Kusunoki. I sent this email as soon as I was able to. I would appreciate it if you would add me to your address book. Okay, that's an emote. My apologies for making you accompany me today. Sorry, even so, I still had a lot of fun. Perhaps because it was my first time going to a store like that, or... Wait a minute, is this when she and Takumi went to, animate? Or, maybe it was because Nishijo-kun was with me. Lol. What time will you be coming in tomorrow, Nishijo-kun? Oh, I'm only asking because I was hoping I'd be able to say hello tomorrow morning, that's all. It'd be nice if we could run into each other again tomorrow. Well, I'll be sure to email you again soon. Good night. Aw, she still wants to communicate with us. Well, I guess I shouldn't be surprised there, because she's investigating our connection to the mysterious going-ons happening in Shibuya. So, I mean, at least on that front, I shouldn't really be surprised. But I guess she wants to hang out with him just because, well, they're fellow otaku hobbyists. At least I would hope that'd be the case, because, well, the poor bastard could really use some genuine friends. No offense to Misumi-kun or anything like that. Or Rimi, I guess. Honestly, thinking about it now, I'm not sure what I'm even... Yeah, forget it. I'm not even making sense even to myself right now. Ah, shit, I forgot to read that. The only sound present in the room was the distinct clacking of a keyboard. Kusunoki Yua's thin, supple fingers moved as they were dancing, her gaze fixed on the monitor all the while. Her touch typing was effortless, and she made next to no typos. She was writing an email. A very long one at that. Yua had already been writing for almost half an hour, endlessly deliberating over the contents of the email, making frequent revisions as she continued to type. I know that pain all too well. Suddenly, her fingers stopped moving. With a small pained sigh, she abruptly pressed and held down the backspace key. The cursor that was lit up on the monitor began scrolling leftward at high speed. All the long sentences she had written so far disappeared nearly instantaneously as the cursor traveled across the screen. What's wrong with it? It seems fine to me. When all the contents had been erased, Yua took hold of the Gerofroggy stuffed animal lying on her bed, then hugged it tightly to her chest. This was a habit that Yua had developed recently. If she did not hug something in this way, she would be faced with unbearable anxiety. Burying her chin in the stuffed animal, Yua sighed once again and shook her head softly.
私に勇気をください
Murmuring softly to no one in particular, Yua's expression stiffened. With the stuffed animal resting on her lap, she returned her hands to the keyboard. Within the monitor, each letter she typed in a fluid manner was quickly displayed in sequence. Compared to the one she had erased just moments before, this email was far more short and simple. It only served to provide the bare necessities of what she needed to convey. When she finished writing, Yua hesitated for a moment, and then she resolutely clicked on the send icon.
送っちゃった。
Before she could stop it from going through, the email had already been sent in the blink of an eye. Yua squeezed the jail froggy sitting on her lap tightly, and continued to stare at the monitor in front of her for over an hour. Although she had not been expecting one, there was no sign of a reply at all. Speaking of the man of the hour himself, I see you're inside your favorite booth. There I was, in my beloved room 37. As I sank down into the recliner, I started chewing on my nails in an attempt to distract myself from my irritation. There was a reason why I'd come to At Cafe 2 days in a row, yesterday and today. Because people keep knocking on your door, right, son? 2 nights ago, after Grimm, Shio and I found out what that was. No, you haven't had any super recent visitors, that's right. 2 nights ago, after Grimm, Shiho, and I had found out that what Sena had said was true, I received an email from Yua. In it, she instantly said that she wanted to talk to me one more time. Fuck off, I'd wanted to tell her. What the hell did she mean wanted to talk? After deceiving me like that, I had nothing to say to her. Even if I did, she'd probably just come up with some new fancy way to trap me when I went to see her. As if I could risk that. It was true that I wasn't used to talking to girls. That's why I'd been so happy back when Yua was hitting on me. And yet, the harlot had been toying with me behind my back. And on top of that, she'd come up with all those insane delusions. Even if I had delusions, sure. Even I had delusions, sure. But I never bothered anyone else with them. I disagree. When you get spaced out, I mean, people tend to notice. But that girl assaulted me for schizo BS that treated me like I was the new gen culprit. I could never forgive what she'd done to me. Never. So, I ignored her email, but there had still been one thing that concerned me. In her email, she said she was going to come to my base, and I knew for a fact that she knew my address. That was why I decided to take refuge in At Cafe, despite it not being a school day. If I had the option, I would have brought my D-sword as a protection charm, but unlike Sena, I didn't have the courage to walk down Center Guy with it. At any rate, spending almost half a day in the internet cafe was fairly tiring. The recliners were comfortable, and it was equipped with showers, but I still couldn't fully relax like I could at my base. Then, the biggest problem of all. Saratan wasn't here. Should have brought her with you. Problem solved, or at least it would have been if you thought that far ahead. After 2 days spent holed up in the cafe, I realized just how much the mere presence of Saratan helped me. I wanted to hurry up and get back to my base as soon as possible. But going back late at night would mean the date would change. And by that time, the last train would already be gone. I figured that Yua most likely wouldn't be waiting for me anymore by then. I'd just stick around for another 4 hours before the clock would strike midnight. I was sure time would go by a lot faster if I played ESO. I moved my gaze over to the PC monitor. My second character, Lizalette, was standing there aimlessly, not moving.
お前の見ている景色は本物か？
Sena's words came to mind. More than half of what she said was true. The only thing I couldn't find a source for was the part where she was talking about controlling even people's wills and bodies. Maybe that part was just a delusion of hers. Or maybe the nature of research like that would understandably come under a hell of a lot of international scrutiny if it were publicly advertised. You know, with several severe violations of human rights conventions and all that. I think they have a name for it, the Geneva Convention, last I checked. So yeah, I mean, with research like that, understandably, they would like to keep that on the low. Mixing in just a few lies with the truth was a clever and effective way to scare people, especially with threats. Even though my reasonable side knew all that, you have a reasonable side? News to me. I couldn't help but feel scared as I thought about all the strange, inexplicable phenomena that had been plaguing me over the past few weeks. In a daze, I looked at Lizalette on the screen.
リーゼロって、お前の見ている景色は本物か?
Keeping my voice low to avoid being overheard, I whispered that absent-mindedly. I thought about something like this several times in the past. The world that I was looking at right now, Baselard, was the world that Lizalette lived in. It might have been real for her, but from my perspective, it was fake. Which meant that the world that I lived in was seen as fake from the point of view from the person controlling me. However, just as Lizalette couldn't perceive me as a higher being, I also couldn't perceive the person controlling me as a higher being. I wonder if Lizalette was thinking the same things that I was thinking. At the very least, she couldn't move on her own. I had to interfere in order for her to move. So, what about me? Maybe I too couldn't get up from this recliner without the interference of the person controlling me. To test this, I tried to stand up. I did it with ease. After that, I tried sitting down. It took no effort. But this sequence of events, was it really my own volition? Or was it the result of someone's interference? I had no way of knowing.
Eh?
I heard the sound of the patrician door to the private room being opened behind me. At the same time, I felt someone coming in. I am gonna bet it's either Yua or Rimi. Startled, I turned around. First guess was correct! Kusunoki. Yua! I was so terrified that I was about to scream. But Yua's hand quickly covered my mouth. Her hand was hot, and the scent of Yua's sweat infiltrated my nose.
黙って。声は出さないで。出さないって約束して。約束してくれるよね。しないなんて言わないよね。約束して。するでしょ。するの。お願い。
Well, when you say please, how can I say no? Of course we'd have a delusion trigger right here. Of course we would. In this small private room, the only way out was blocked by Yua. I'm gonna go with green. The next thing I knew, my shoulders were being held down with such incredible force, I couldn't get up from the seat. Weakling! Yua's cold gaze pierced through me at point-blank range. I couldn't help but look away, and my eyes fell on the 3 Gero froggies attached to the bag she was carrying on her shoulder.
いい？声を出さないで。
If I didn't do as she said, Yua would kill me. Believing that would happen, I didn't resist and just nodded along.
どうしても伝えたかった。好きなの。分かって、大好き。分かってよ。私のものになって、お願い。
I thought that confessions were supposed to be romantic, heartrending, and happy. But this wasn't like that. This was terrifying. Every word had sent chills down my spine. Holy shit! Not even the green delusion is fixing the atmosphere or killing the tension. In a situation like this, I'd normally confess my love as well, but yeah, like hell you would. Here, it felt like I'd be signing my own death sentence if I did. I had no choice but to be clear and refuse. This girl was nothing more than a stalker. If I didn't refuse here and now, I'd be totally fucked. I'm pretty sure in this situation, most people would assume the opposite to be true, and just say whatever they want to hear, and then, as soon as they can, run to help the nearest authority figure. They call it placation, my friend. Placation! I forcefully shook off Yua's hand.
お断りだ。警察に突き出そう。
Yua's expression became tense, as if in shock. She hung her head, and her demeanor instantly turned timid.
そんなに嫌われてたなんて。ごめんなさい。もう付きまといません。さようなら、西条くん。
She pulled herself away and turned her back to me. Her shoulders drooped. And then, she shakily walked out of the private room. I'd said it! I'd said it! Seeing you crying like that actually made me feel relieved. Monster. I couldn't help but be happy that I'd finally been freed of that stalker. So much so that I unconsciously struck a victory pose. Okay, now can we get back to reality? Thank you. Only to suddenly come back to myself. Since life was never that easy, Yua was right in front of me, covering my mouth.
西条くんのこと騙してたわけだし。
Could you repeat that? She was murmuring something in a quiet whisper. I hadn't heard what she'd said at all. I've been busy escaping from reality. How nice it would have been if that delusion had been real. With no way for my wish to come true, Yua continued to talk.
でも、お願いです。一つだけ言わせてください。これ以上、あなたが傷つくのも、あなたが不幸になるのも、あなたのせいで不幸になる人が出るのも見たくないんです。
What was she talking about? She was talking as if she knew everything about me. Despite the fact that we hadn't even spent 24 hours together. Just what the hell did this girl actually know about me? Was this just another one of her signature batshit insane delusions? A shudder ran through me, and I started flailing my arms and legs. But even so, Yua didn't let go. If this went on for much longer, this girl might actually kill me. Had Shogun given up on trying to trap me and had just sent Yua as an assassin instead? Maybe you should just prick up your ears and listen, and you get an answer. I don't want to die. I don't want to die. I don't want to die!
ごめんなさい。お願いだから静かにしてください。話はすぐ終わりますから。
The tone of her voice was meek, but the power behind Yua's hands as she held me down was so strong, even if I tried to resist, she wouldn't budge an inch. I couldn't believe that such slender hands could be so powerful.
師匠君。
Yua inched her face closer and closer to mine. I desperately turned my head away.
もう。
That was when I noticed. Yua's hands were trembling. Or was it just that my hands were shaking so much, it made it look like hers were too? While I pondered that, something unbelievable came out of her mouth.
人を殺すのはやめてください。
What?
自覚がないんですね。でもそれも私には理解できます。西条君に自覚があるはずないから。
Knowing what?
あなたは
Yua's eyes shone with sorrow. Even though she had been staring at me intently until now, she suddenly cast her eyes downward.
DID 多重人格なんです。
I had multiple personalities?
最初はあなたのこと警察に突き出すつもりでした。
Despite how confused I was, Yua continued to talk.
それが無理ならこの手でとも思ってました。だけどあなたのこと調べていくうちにあなたも苦しんでるんだって分かって。
Just as much as you were, you say. I don't think she's right that Takumi has DID. Based on what I've seen, I think it's more likely that he's just being remotely controlled by another entity. In this case, Shogun. And based on what you was saying, I think I can assume the same is true for her as well. Someone's been taking control of her without her knowledge or consent. But she's mistaken it as symptoms of DID, where there's huge memory gaps in her mind, and evidence of her apparently doing things that she has no memory of. So she's probably with no way to really verify what's actually happening to her. She's just going to DID theory because it's frankly a quick and easy way to explain what might be happening to her. With the same being true with Takumi, when the truth is the reality is not only more complicated, it's a lot more terrifying. And I think the reality is based on some of the things that Sena has said to us in the previous episode. But I guess we'll see if I'm truly right at the end of the day, whenever somebody who's more knowledgeable about what's going on here will finally decide to spill the beans to us once and for all. But I think I am right. The eyes behind Yua's glasses once again took hold of me. They pleaded with me. And no matter how hard I tried to see it as something else, I couldn't see her as anything other than genuinely worried about me. And that horrified me.
私あなたを助けたい。
This girl's delusions were getting out of control. What she was saying was totally insane. Or was it? Was it really insane?
だから病院に行きましょう。
I didn't truly know myself, understand myself. I had posted in a chat room under the handle Shogun without knowing it. Even though I had no memory of it, I had become friends with a girl named Rimi. It wasn't just me sleepwalking. And it wasn't just some higher being controlling me. Disagree. Maybe the person controlling me from inside my head literally was inside my head. I wasn't me. I wasn't me. I was a different personality. I had multiple personalities. My head hurt. A throbbing, stabbing pain ripped through it. It wasn't possible. The entire thing was bullshit. Who would ever believe that? It too was yet another one of Yua's delusions. She was my enemy. She was impeding my way of life. She was trying to trap me. She was trying to destroy my mind. Even the hospital itself was under Shogun's reign. The only person I trusted, Dr. Takashina, had disappeared in such a sudden, inexplicable manner. Shogun must have made him disappear. And if I did what you said, he'd make me disappear too. Nah. Think for a minute, you dunce! If Shogun was just an alternate personality of yourself, how would it help Shogun to make his own body, which you also happen to inhabit, quote-unquote, disappear? It would kind of impede Shogun's own ability to do anything that he wants to do. Up to and possibly including living. Don't you think? Like, come on, man. Stop panicking for a second and actually think about what you're thinking. I don't believe her. It's not true. 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 Yeah, I'm not reading all that. Fuck that. I was stuck in my own head. I shoved you off me with every ounce of strength I could muster. Slamming into the wooden sliding door behind her, Yua slumped down to the floor with a grimace. Finally freed from Yua's grasp, I grabbed my bag, stepped over Yua's body, and made for the exit. Still crumpled on the floor, Yua grabbed my ankle. Her hair was disheveled, and her glasses were falling off her face, but she made no effort to fix them. Seeing her clinging so desperately to me terrified me so much, a pathetic scream escaped from my mouth. She was my enemy, one of Shogun's underlings. I won't be deceived. I won't be deceived by you ever again. I shouted as loud as I could, and Yua quickly let go of me. In that window, I bolted out of the room. I tore a 5,000 yen bill from my wallet and slammed it down on the counter in front of the dumbfounded receptionist. At least you remembered to pay. And then, without getting my change, I burst onto the elevator leading outside. I nearly tumbled out of the elevator as I burst outside. The sun was already setting. I examined my surroundings. There were people everywhere. Run. It doesn't matter where. Just run. My base wasn't safe. She was following me. I had no idea where to even go, but I started running away. Thinking that Yua might get off on another elevator any moment now. That she might threaten me again in that ice-cold voice of hers. I didn't want to stay there for even a second longer. I looked behind me over and over again, but I kept on running regardless of what I saw. The pedestrians were all in the way. I bumped into a businessman and a Do-kyun-esque high school girl. When that happened, I was showered with curses. But I still didn't stop. I just kept on running. It hurt to breathe. I picked some random ass road without thinking, and I still had no idea where I was running. I stopped to catch my breath. I checked the scenery behind me where I was standing. It was in front of Maruichi, which meant I could take shelter in Miyashita Park. I would take a quick break there, then I would run somewhere farther away. If I went to Yoyogi Park, there would be plenty of places to hide, so I could spend the night there. I couldn't help but wonder what was behind me. I didn't see any signs of Yua. However, I wouldn't be surprised if she appeared in front of me in any second now, complete with the most terrifying, demonic expression I'd ever encountered. My instincts screamed at me. Run! You need to run! Well, look who it is. The Great King of Terror has something in this city? The King of Terror, huh? Who's the king? Oops. Exhausted, I weakly sat down on the pavement of the Miyashita Park overpass. I'd run way too much. My throat was dying. I wanted to drink a nice ice-cold cola. That wouldn't help your hydration all that much. Dehydration. But I didn't see any vending machines nearby. Maybe I was okay now that I'd come this far. No, I couldn't be careless. I still had to be fully aware of my surroundings. There should only be a few people in Miyashita Park at night. Or at least that's what I had expected, but much to my surprise, that wasn't the case. There was a businessman walking briskly through the park, likely using it as a shortcut. An older man sitting on a bench, messing with his cell phone. Several homeless people sitting around absent-mindedly. And lastly, a person wearing blue talking to one of them. A police officer. Another one so soon. The police. I gulped audibly. I remembered that I'd been questioned by a pair of detectives a while ago. I'm going to go with green again. I hadn't heard a single thing from them since then. They'd say they were going to guard the area surrounding my base, but there was no sign of them following through on it. Although, according to Misumi-kun, they'd apparently come to investigate Tsume. Those two detectives, what were their names again? I couldn't remember. I told both of them the truth about what I'd witnessed at the scene of the Crew of Fiction, but in hindsight, I couldn't help but think that they'd clearly been looking at me with suspicion as I did. Whereas I thought that, the policeman who had been talking to the homeless man glanced at me. Or at least, that's how it felt. Oh no. No, I had to be imagining things. There was no way the police would suspect me of anything. I wasn't a murderer. I wouldn't hurt a fly. Forget that for now. I'd just take a break for a little bit longer. My chest still hadn't stopped pounding. No delusion this time. For no particular reason, I looked up at the night sky as my shallow breathing continued. I couldn't see any stars. The glaring artificial light that shone above the ground cast a thin veil across the Shibuya sky. It blocked out even the faintest light of the stars that had traveled for decades, for centuries, to get here, transforming the night sky into a flat, emotionless blackness. What a piece of shit sky. But that was normal for Shibuya. For someone living in Shibuya, this sky was my sky. I returned my gaze to the policeman from earlier, and I jumped. The policeman was coming toward me. I had to avoid making eye contact. I stood up and turned my eyes to the road, stretching under the overpass. The footsteps were getting closer and closer. I prayed from the bottom of my heart that they would pass by me. But...
Kimi!
A voice called out. One that was clearly directed at me.
ちょっといいか?
My heartbeat, which only just started calming down, began to violently pound in my chest once more.
すいません。急いでるんで。
そうは見えないな。
What reason could this cop have possibly had for talking to me? I started putting a list together inside my head. Number 1, because I'm alone at night in an unusual place. Number 2, because I look suspicious. 3, because they're just questioning people at random. 4, because the police think I'm a suspect for the new gen case.
身分を証明するもの。そうだな。生徒手帳を見せてくれないか?
Damn it. I didn't have time for this. I need to hurry up and hide somewhere less conspicuous. If I didn't, you would find me again. But if I ran away from the cops, I could get arrested for obstruction of justice. Not only that, but if they were investigating me because of reason number 4, then bolting would put me in an even worse position. Regardless of the circumstances, I had to get past this cop, and I had to do it fast. With no other options, I took my student handbook out from inside my uniform pocket and handed it to the officer. The officer took it and flipped it open to check my name and photo. Immediately after, something changed in his face. His expression stiffened. What? What was up with him? If I had to guess, I'd say this officer that this particular officer is part of the new gen investigation unit, and he was present during one of the meetings where your name briefly came up when they were investigating the crew fiction scene in particular. And maybe he recognizes you. Did my name really warrant that kind of reaction? Maybe I really am a new gen suspect. The police were mistaken. I hadn't done anything. Yua made up her mind and decided that I was the new gen criminal. She said I just wasn't aware of it. That couldn't be true. I didn't sleepwalk. I didn't have multiple personalities. Stop screwing with my head.
ありがとう。
To my surprise, the policeman readily returned my handbook to me. He then quickly turned back around and headed toward the park, almost as if running away. That is an interesting reaction, not gonna lie. How he was acting spoke far louder than words. I had a terrible feeling about this. Did they actually suspect me? I stared at the officer's back, frozen. Then, the policeman suddenly gave a light bow to the man sitting on the bench. Or at least that was what it looked like. Something's off. Was it just my imagination? I knew for a fact that he looked at the man on the bench. But I couldn't figure out if he'd actually bowed to him, or if it just looked like he had. The policeman left the park directly after that. The man on the bench looked like he was still messing with his cell phone. Looked like being the key words. It didn't even look like his fingers were moving. I couldn't see him clearly because of the darkness. Normally, the cell phone screen would be glowing, but the one he was holding was completely dark. Something's really off here. I looked around to check on everyone else in the park. One of the homeless people was slouching on the ground at the base of a large tree, a spot that was far removed from the others. He didn't move in the slightest. All he did was hold up a strange sign, his face staring down on the ground. The 3 or so homeless people squatting in front of the small hut, covered by the blue tarp, didn't seem to be having much of a conversation. They were just sitting around in a circle. One of them had their hand over their mouth. It almost seemed like they were doing it deliberately, like they were trying to cover their mouth with their hand or collar or something. Or at least, that was what it looked like. I didn't know why exactly, but something feels off. There's a strange sensation of tension seizing the air. Granted, it could have just been my imagination, but... hold on. Was it possible that everyone was an undercover cop? No, Takumi, I don't think that's what this is. That delusion floated up to the top of my head, and I shuddered. I frantically told myself it was nothing more than that. A delusion. But even if it was, I didn't want to stay here any longer. Time to run. I broke into a sprint. I ran across the overpass and headed for the stairs, leading down to Mijidori. I stopped right in front of them and whipped around to look behind me. The man on the bench was getting up. None of the other people moved. His body turned towards me, but his head was facing sideways. He was making his way toward me. He seemed to be walking a little faster than someone normally would. He was chasing me. That man was a detective. His build was unusually bulky. I didn't even know what his job could be otherwise. Maybe he's one of those men in black that we've been seeing wandering around. I couldn't figure anything out from his appearance alone. I can't tell if he's a detective from just that. No, he had to be one. There was no way he wasn't one. He was tailing me. I couldn't stay here. I bolted down the stairs. Shit! 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 Now it wasn't just you that was after me, but the police too? And I hadn't done anything wrong. I hadn't done anything at all. Look at all those bikes. Should I just tell them I was innocent? But even if I did, I couldn't get away from the fact that I was literally running away from the police right now. Besides, I was sure that the police would find some way to pin it on me regardless. They would never believe an otaku freak like me. I didn't have time to think about what would happen next. For now, I just needed to get away from Yua and the police. That was the sole thought occupying my mind. I passed under a pedestrian overpass and ran up the stairs leading to it. There were people everywhere. All of them were blocking my path. It felt as if each and every one of them were deliberately getting in my way. Like they all had some form of malicious intent. Everyone looked like they could be cops. I was this close to completely panicking. I looked behind me and saw someone sprinting after me. Oh, they are sprinting after you, huh? I caught a glimpse of a person cutting through the crowd just like I was. He was one of the people I'd seen in the park. I didn't know who it was. Plot twist, it's the homeless man with the strange sign. It didn't matter. They were following me regardless. I was horrified. If I got caught, my life would be over. I'd be falsely accused of a crime I didn't commit, sentenced to death, locked up in a high-security prison for decades and decades. Then after I finished enduring that living hell, I would finally be told, alrighty then, your number's up. Time for you to die. That'd be a huge waste of taxpayer dollars. Just saying. If they were gonna kill you anyway, why not? Why wait? Why drag it out? Why not just get it over with? I didn't want that. I wouldn't be able to handle that. I didn't want to live like that. Even if I somehow managed to prove that it was a false accusation, once I was branded as a criminal, it would never go away. Everyone around me would look at me suspiciously for the rest of my life. Yeah, the court of public opinion can be very unforgiving. I didn't want that. I hadn't even done anything! Ah, look where we are. I turned onto a small street that was completely deserted, and kept running as hard as I could. But I had been running ever since I left At Cafe, and I still hadn't been able to catch my breath. My lungs were begging for oxygen. My legs were shaking with fatigue. I hated myself for not exercising more, but it was too late for that regardless. It's never too late to start jogging. Finally, I couldn't run anymore, so I doubled over and gripped my knees with my hands. The place where I'd stopped looked familiar. Distinctive red bricks, paired with a gigantic backlit sign that read Gigantes. I'd been here before, with Misumi-kun. We'd come to see a Phantasm concert, or to be more specific, to see their lead singer, Fess. But now the place was quiet and empty, with the only other light being from the vending machine dimly illuminating my surroundings. Frustrated that my breathing still hadn't gone back to normal, I looked back toward the road I had sprinted down. The street was dimly lit and narrow. As the Tokyo line slowly passed by directly above me, despite the striking glow of the light leaking from the windows of the train, even it didn't reach the streets below. I stared at the road in front of me. I wondered if I'd managed to lose them, them being Yua and the police. It was too dark for me to tell for sure.
私についてきて。
Fess? Suddenly, I heard a woman's voice in my ear, and I let out a pathetic scream before toppling to the ground. I'm surprised he had the oxygen to scream. Yep. Hello. It was Fess, dressed in a flashy outfit that she would wear to a concert. As she quietly looked down at me from the darkness, the eruptive energy that she'd given off while she was on stage was now completely absent, making her appear almost transient, like she might disappear at any moment. Because of the darkness, I couldn't see her expression. As my mind wandered in my surprise, Fess gently held her hand out to me.
だって、早く。
Her tone of voice was dispassionate, but I could tell that she wasn't going to let me argue with her. Still holding out her hand, Fess slowly craned her neck, then narrowed her eyes as if she had seen through the darkness.
逃げないと。
Why? Did she know that I'd been running from you and the police? I don't think that's what you need to be running from. I was freaked out for a second, but I knew that right now, salvation was almost within my grasp. That was why, as if clinging to my only hope left, I took her hand. Her hand was cold to the touch. Right as I stood up, Fess started running. As I was utterly exhausted, I felt incredible resentment. But I knew that if it hadn't been for Fess, I would have never been able to stand up again, and the police would have likely caught up with me. I still wanted to quench my dying thirst in some way, but I knew I couldn't afford to. Fess pulled me by the hand and led us forward. We entered a narrow alleyway and made for a turn after turn at various intersections. I had no idea where I was running to. I wasn't even familiar with the layout of Shibuya, so I had no choice but to follow Fess the entire time. I nearly entertained the idea this could be another trap set by Shogun, but I shook the thought from my head. Even if Fess was another one of Shogun's underlings, there would be nothing I could do about it. My legs were heavy with lactic acid, and I was starting to feel lightheaded. Probably because my brain had been getting enough oxygen due to all the running. This looks familiar. I was this close to crying out and saying that I couldn't run anymore. In fact, I may or may not have said it several times unconsciously. But even so, Fess never once looked back at me. She just kept on going. Before I knew it, I found myself on a road where the Shuto Expressway ran overhead. Shibuya Station was only a little bit farther away, but there were barely any people around. Without a shred of hesitation, Fess started to head down the stairs that led into the gaping maw of the underground. Upon reaching the bottom of the stairs, she finally came to a stop. I let go of Fess's hand and doubled over on the stairs, gasping for breath. I'd wondered how much running I had done today. I didn't think I'd ever exercised so much in my entire life. For a while, the only sounds present in a dim, dreary underground tunnel were the sounds of me and Fess breathing. I looked up at the entrance where we had just come down from, but there was no sign of our pursuers. I guess that meant we managed to escape somehow. That aside, this is my first time learning that this underground passage even existed. On top of that, even though it was fairly close to the station, there wasn't a single person passing through it. One of the fluorescent lights that illuminated the tunnel was on its last legs, flickering on and off without end. There was the faint smell of rotting garbage in the air. It was a place that symbolized the underground side of Shibuya. Literally. If someone were to attack me here, even if I screamed out as loud as I could, it may not even reach the outside. This was not a place I would ever want to come alone to. Still breathing heavily, I slowly examined Fess's profile. I'm gonna go with red this time. She was a charismatic songstress who captivated the youth of Shibuya. People even called her a prophet. Even now, that very same Fess was here alone with an otaku freak piece of shit like me. I wasn't sure what to make of it. Her forehead was beaded with sweat, with several drops running down her cheeks. She was wiping off at the back of her hand. Her breasts, exposed through her camisole, rose and fell with every breath she took. A glimpse providing healthy eroticism in an atmosphere floating with ennui. Moe didn't do it justice. The best and only possible word befitting her was erotic. I'm very tempted to switch to green just to get a good laugh out of whatever erotic delusion he clearly wants to have. But I'm gonna stay consistent and keep it red. As Misumi-kun had said before, Fess really did have a great body, huh? When she was wearing her school uniform, it wasn't really all that noticeable, but when she wore tight clothes like this camisole, it came across very well. She was tall, had moderately sized breasts, and an extremely curvy waist. And most important of all, her legs that were sticking out from her miniskirt. They were long, slender, and well-toned. She looked like a model. I was sure a girl with a body this good would look great in a swimsuit. No. Wait just a second here. I hadn't considered it until now, but a school swimsuit might work well too. The always chill Fess, wearing a school swimsuit. And that thigh gap was almost too much for me. Wait, what kind of stupid shit was I thinking about? Did I forget the situation I was in? Clearly.
追われてたわね。
えうん。
警察。
I nodded in response. It wasn't just the police. Yua was following me too, but I was too exhausted to tell her that.
私も同じ。
Huh? What was that supposed to mean?
私が書いた歌詞と何とかって呼ばれてる事件との関係についてだってしつこく聞かれたわ。
New Gen. The lyrics that Fess had written matched up with that string of incidents. That was why all her sheep wouldn't shut up with all those rumors. They'd been saying that she was a prophet.
私疑われてるみたい。
As a New Gen criminal? I thought the same thing back when I first heard her lyrics. Hell, I even thought that Fess herself was Shogun. But considering the fact that she'd saved me, she probably wasn't. Putting all that aside, I wondered why Fess was even there. Her saving me must have just been a coincidence. Yeah, it had to be. I mean, I'd been right in front of the concert venue, so there was probably just another concert today.
君が追われてるのはなぜ？何か悪いことでもしたの？
チクられた。あの女、僕のことチクったんだ。ニュージェネの犯人にされる。
Yua was trying to set me up. God damn it. Shogun and that girl were going to ruin my life! What life?
そう。容疑者候補ね。私たち。
Why was she laughing?
僕は無実だ!
I yelled out frantically. My voice reverberated loudly throughout the underpass. But I couldn't stop now.
事件を目撃しただけだ。証拠品を勝手に持ち帰っちゃったけど、それだけ。僕殺してない。
それなら。
Fess whispered, returning to her original dispassionate voice.
きっとそれは導きなのよ。大いなる存在により。
Another fucking mental case? Another goddamn shinobu?
君の見たものが事実だったか幻だったかは些細なこと。
That horrible scene. Was there any possibility that had all just been an illusion? But had all felt so real?
君が今抱いている苦しみや怒りは必要なものだったということよ。
What was she saying? I was utterly dejected. I had been slightly suspicious back at the concert, and I turned out to be right. Fess really was a total schizo freak. Pot calling kettle black. They say there's a fine line between genius and insanity, but this is pushing it.
だから早く見つけて剣見つけて。
I was taken back. That was what Fess told me back when we met at school. If you do, you'll be granted salvation. She'd said this before. Aside from the police, what scared me the most was Shogun and his underlings. I had no idea why, but they were all trying to trap me, and they all clearly had malicious intent. In order to save myself from them, in order to protect myself, I needed...
理想度
そうよ。
Fess's lips twisted into the shape of a smile.
勉強したみたいね。
それなら手に入れた。僕は理想度も持ってる。今家に。
知ってるわ。
She knew? How'd she know?
見たから。君が渋谷のど真ん中を歩いていたのを。大きなおもちゃを抱きしめて恥ずかしそうにしてたわね。
Was she talking about the day I bought the D-sword? What else? Fess had seen me. Fuck my life. Again, what life? Wait a minute. What had she just said?
おもちゃ
The smile had already disappeared from Fess's face. She glanced at my face and let out a small sigh. Her sense of inui, her aloofness, was so pure it made me feel uneasy.
偽物だと思うわ。あなたの買った剣は。
Can't say I'm surprised. I wasn't even that surprised. I'd expected it, honestly. The sword I'd bought was way too cheap compared to the one Sena had. It didn't even glow. Besides, the idea that a sword that would supposedly bring me salvation was being sold for 10,000 yen alongside sex toys was the least anime thing possible. So yeah, I wasn't surprised. Instead, I felt a furious surge of anger well up inside me. Anger at the gloomy shopkeeper who tricked me. Anger at myself for being so pathetic that I'd be tricked at easily. Anger at Fess for saying nothing meaningful in the slightest instead of just giving me a straight answer.
じゃあ
I stood up and moved closer to Fess. Normally, I would have never done something like that. But I was desperate. I've been being chased by Yua and the police only a few moments ago, and I was absolutely terrified. Not only that, but in the past month or so, I experienced countless bad thoughts. It was all too much for me. I couldn't take it anymore. I had to get my hands on a sword so I could get back to my peaceful way of life.
教えてよ理想度どうやって手に入れるのか
Fess's expression stiffened. Then she turned to me.
見て。
She suddenly thrust the palm of her right hand out in front of me. Stopping me from coming any closer, Fess curled her right hand into a fist. And upon swinging her hand behind her in a motion resembling a back fist, together with a sound akin to that of glass breaking, the empty space cracked, and then it shattered. My eyes went wide. I was speechless. Fess stared at me. Her expression had not changed in the slightest. Within the cracks of the shattered space was a deep darkness spreading wide. With her hand buried between the fissures, Fess pulled her hand back toward her with tremendous force. Look at that. And now, within that hand, was a giant sword.
ソード
The fissures in the empty space were repaired in an instant. The cracks disappeared as if nothing had even happened. It all happened in the span of a few seconds. Had that been a magic trick? Or was what I seen just a delusion? It was far too removed from reality. I couldn't believe what had just happened right in front of me. This was a fantasy. A fantasy anime.
この剣は命運を握るもの。
That sword. It was the same one she'd been wielding at the concert. The same one I'd mistaken for a microphone stand. Its shape almost looked like a battleship ripped straight from a sci-fi anime.
この剣は嘆きを収束させたもの。
There was no straight lines to be found on it. And yet, it appeared incredibly sharp. Incredibly beautiful. Incredibly sinister.
この剣は超越した場所に干渉するためのもの。
And if you so much as touched it, your fingers would be severed from the bone.
超越した場所って。
I was mesmerized. Her D-sword utterly captivated me. Which is why I'd asked her that without thinking.
異空間のようなもの。
Another space. Like another plane of reality. Oh boy, info dump time. This was definitely an anime at this point.
同一次元上にあるもう一つの可能性。
So, a pocket dimension?
あるいは妄想。
Or rather, the power to make your own delusions manifest in reality. A delusion.
言い方にあまり意味はないわ。唯一確かなの。この剣もその領域に存在しているということ。
So in other words, she was saying that her D-sword was a product of her delusions. Did that mean that the supernatural phenomena I'd seen before had also been delusions? Had they not been real?
そんなのありえない。
そう。
If it was a delusion, then why was I seeing Fess's sword right now?
言葉に引きずられてはダメよ。後ろを振り返ってみて。
I was baffled by Fess's request, but I complied anyway. Behind me was a flight of stairs, and on those stairs was Fess, wearing only a school swimsuit. Did you make that appear, Fess?
ああ、
Or did I make it appear? Fess was standing right beside me. Fess was also standing on the stairs right in front of me. Two the same person, in the same place. And not only that, but one of them was wearing a school swimsuit. Completely and utterly flustered, I relentlessly snapped back and forth between the two Fesses over and over again, comparing them. They were exactly the same, right down to their facial features, height, and hairstyles. The only differences were their clothes, and whether or not they were carrying a sword. They weren't twins or anything like that. And they didn't just look alike. They were one and the same. I was used to seeing girls in school swimsuits in eroge, but here, I couldn't handle it for some reason. Fess was standing in the middle of this disgusting underpass in only a school swimsuit. And not only that, but there was a name tag on her chest with the name Kishimoto written on it in permanent marker. Moe. I felt like I was about to lose my mind from how unbelievable this situation was. Even though I knew I shouldn't look at her, I couldn't help but feel like I was this close to stealing a glance anyway. It took a lot of willpower in order to keep my eyes down. I automatically apologized. Because I knew that only a few minutes ago, I had a delusion about this very thing. Fast wearing a school swimsuit. The two Fesses said this at the same time, as if they could see right through me. I jumped, startled. I could feel my face rapidly turning red. I needed an excuse. I needed a way out of this. If a 3D girl labeled me as a pervert, it'd be over. I'd be socially obliterated. Okay, wait. While that may be important, the more pressing matter is, what the hell is happening? Glad to see you're finally getting your priorities straightened a little bit. Oh, come on, man. It was just starting to get interesting. Then you cut me off. Fuck you. As he walked cautiously through the narrow, trash-ridden streets of Maruyamacho, Ban Yasuji jammed one hand inside of his pants pocket. Inside, he found a few dozen small coins.
先輩、貼り付けの現場に何があるって言うんすか？もう事件から2週間以上経ってるし、散々調べられた後っすよ。新しい証拠なんて出てきませんって。
His partner, Detective Suwa, had been walking behind him, grousing in an irritated voice for quite some time. That was understandable, of course, as the job originally assigned to them had been to tail an important witness for the new gen cases, Nishijo Takumi. However, the two of them had abandoned their tailing mission, and instead came to the scene of the third new gen incident, colloquially known as the Crew of Fiction. Ban had decided to abandon their original task of tailing Nishijo Takumi, forcing the burden onto some other detective in the same jurisdiction. The rookie detective, Suwa, was not pleased by this.
やっぱまずいっすよ。尾行に戻りましょう。
The rookie detective had consistently been pushed around by his senior without any explanation, and he could not stand it. For that reason, he had been insistently trying to persuade Ban for a long while now. But to this, Ban only said,
いいから黙ってついてこいって。
He remained aloof and refused to heed his junior's perfectly sound arguments. Finally, they at last came to a narrow road, blocked off by yellow barricade tape. As Suwa let out the latest in his myriad of sighs, his cell phone began vibrating near his chest. He quickly took out his phone, which had been set to vibrate, assumed the look of a capable detective, and pressed the accept button.
座っす。はい。はい。
As he listened to Suwa's voice coming from behind him, Ban came to a stop in front of the barricade tape. Behind that tape was the crime scene. A deep darkness had settled over the area, just as it had when the crime had been committed. But now there was no remain traces of the incident, save for the barricade tape.
見失った？女か。やられたっすね。とりあえず深センの家に戻ってほしいっす。はい。張り込んでてください。いやいや大丈夫っすよ。責任はバン警部補が取るっすから。
Ban smiled wryly upon hearing that. Suwa could be surprisingly shrewd. Of course, Ban had no intention of placing the blame onto his subordinates, nor onto the detective he had placed in charge.
なるべく早くこっちも合流します。本当申し訳ないっす。お願いします。
Right as Suwa hung up the phone and returned his begrudging gaze to Ban, Ban ducked under the tape. Suwa had no choice but to reluctantly accompany him.
見失ったって？
尾行に気づかれたっす。直前にネットカフェで一騒動あったみたいっすし。
女っての？
岸本綾瀬っす。
お騒がせバンドの嬢ちゃんかな。つながりは？
同じ学校の同じ学年っすね。他は今のところ特に。クラスメートでもないっす。
Ban brought a hand to his chin, savoring the rough texture of his stubble for a moment. After which, he took out several coins from his pocket and started counting them in the dark one by one. Suwa stared at his eccentric behavior with a puzzled look on his face.
何してるんすか？
よりによって5円玉だけありゃしね。そう、お前5円玉持ってねえか？
はあ。
Perplexed, Suwa took out a 5-yen coin out from his wallet and held it out to Ban. However, instead of taking it straight away, Ban tore the button off the shirt he was wearing. He then untied the thread fastened to the button.
先輩、ついに頭おかしくなったんすか？
生意気な口聞くようになったじゃねえか。
Ban chuckled and lightly whacked Shuya on the head. He then took the thread and waded through the hole in the center of the coin.
よし、お前にやらせてやるよ。
After pinching both ends of the thread with his fingers, Ban let the 5-yen coin hang down and handed it to his junior.
振り子っすか？
ああ。
Ban smiled mischievously.
こいつが事件の重要なヒントを与えてくれるかもしれねえぜ。
マジっすか？バンさん、勘弁してほしいっすよ。そのために仕事をほっぽってここまで来たんすか？
Suwa's tone was almost mournful. He had been pushed around countless times by Ban before now, but this time, Ban had finally managed to utterly stump the rookie detective.
サイキック操作とかダウジングとか
Dowsing, huh?
その手のテレビでも見て影響を受けたんすね、先輩。
Dowsing, a technique for locating groundwater, mineral deposits, or various other things by relying on the movement of a rod, pendulum, or other similar technology. One of the most popular methods is to use two angled rods, typically in the form of L-shaped wires. The person who does the dowsing is called a dowser. It is widely believed that the human body has an internal magnet that reacts to underground water veins and other objects, and that this causes muscles to move unconsciously. The prevailing theory is that this is why dowsing rods appear as if they move by themselves. Interesting.
そういうお前も詳しいじゃねえの。
いやまあ自分も見たは見たっすよ。先週のユーリ・ブライトマン。ユーリ・ブライトマンっすよ。今話題になってるアメリカの超能力捜査官っす。
Psychic detective. Typically found in America, is an investigator who uses psychic abilities such as clairvoyance in order to aid in solving crime. Often appears in Japanese media. However, despite the established title, such a position does not actually exist in America, and the mainstream perception of psychic investigation is that it is extremely ineffective. It's kind of underselling it a little bit.
俺が見たがそんなチャラチャラしたもんじゃねえや。どこかのお偉い大学教授が出ててだな。
でもテレビっすよね。
いちいち文句の多いやつだ。やってみりゃわかる。ほら、いいから吊るしてみろって。
When his senior issued that request, Suwa did not have any room to refuse. His lips pursed in a sullen manner, but he reluctantly accepted the 5 yen coin. He pinched the ends of the string and began to twirl around in a circle, creating a centrifugal motion. It was too dark for either of them to see it clearly, so Ban flicked on a 100 yen cigarette lighter and used it as their light source.
先輩ってタバコ吸いましたっけ？
10年以上前に禁煙したよ。なんでだ？
ライター持ってたっすから。
こういうこともあろうかと用意しといたんだよ。
はは。で、これで何がわかるんす？
もっといろいろ動かしたり止めたりしてみろ。
Ban monitored the movement of the 5 yen coin intently. Ban's eyes were so intensely serious, Suwa could no longer complain about this being a pointless excursion.
やっぱりな。すわ、わかるか？
何がっす
5円玉の動きだよ。さっきから少しだけ楕円を描いているような気がしねえか
An ellipse. Using the thread as support, the dangling 5 yen coin was slowly revolving around in a circular motion. Suwa cocked his head.
力の入れ方とかじゃないんすかね。
お前、楕円に回るように意識してやってんのか？
いや、結構適当にくるくると。
もっと手を動かさねえようにやってみろ。
はあ。
Suwa consciously tried to move his hand in a circular fashion, but no matter how hard he tried, the trajectory drawn by the 5 yen coin was always elliptical in shape.
おかしいな。
意識的に違う形にしようとしてもできねえだろ？
Ban's face was full of pride. Suwa, on the other hand, was still not convinced, and continued relentlessly in his quest to try and change the motion of the pendulum.
まあ、渋谷のどこでもこの現象が見られるわけじゃねえが、それでも十数箇所はここみてえな場所があるらしいぜ。
確かに不思議っすね。でも、だから何なんす
Ban looked up in satisfaction, put his lighter back in his pocket, then retrieved the hand fan that he had stabbed between his belt and his pants.
お前、渋谷がなんでここまで若者を引きつけるか知ってるか
？5円玉が楕円を描くからっすか？
Suwa thought he was making a clever jab, but Ban nodded readily in response, calmly fanning his face all the while.
まあ、そういうことだ。
なぜこの渋谷という場所は若者たちをこんなにも引きつけると思う？
Okay, I'll admit even I'm a little bit stumped by where Ban was going with that whole thing. Unless he's referring to how Shibuya tends to be a source of strange phenomena like that elliptical motion for the coin. Unless that in of itself is what tends to draw so many young people to Shibuya. Unless that's what he's referring to, then frankly, I'm just as confused as Suwa is by where he was going with it. Anyway, back into the underground tunnel. Why do you think Shibuya attracts so many youths? Suddenly, the conversation I was having with Fest transitioned into something completely unrelated. But I was actually somewhat relieved by that. I expected Fest to start treating me like a pervert, but she just ignored it like nothing had even happened. Does this have something to do with D-swords? If not, then I didn't care. I had to somehow find a way to get Fest to tell me how to get my hands on a real D-sword. Both in front of and behind me, The same words were being spoken from the two fesses at the exact same time. Perfect synchronization. It gave me a somewhat strange feeling. Had Fess split in half? Were both of them the real Fess? Or were both of them imposters?
日本中の人たちに刻まれている若者のマーチという疑問はなぜかしら。
Why? Well, that has absolutely nothing to do with me.
ファッションの街だからお店がたくさんあるから流行の発信地だからよくテレビに映るから交通の便がいいから違うわドル。
The two fesses paused for a moment. Being watched from both in front and from behind started to make me feel uncomfortable.
大いなる意志高次存在もっとわかりやすく言う神よ意志な
God, huh? Greater Will, God, Project Noah, Perfect World, delusions manifesting reality. I'm starting to notice a certain religious theming going on here. This is bad. My rational side warned me. Could this be? Maybe she was trying to recruit me to some sketchy religious cult. I began to feel uneasy. Man, maybe I should just get the heck out of here. But upon hearing the next thing Fess said to me, I realized I no longer had that option.
理想だもまたその意志による導き
引力ってあるだろ？
Ban returned to the main street from the alleyway, and then began walking toward Shibuya Station. Suwa, who had now assumed they were going to Shinsen, chased after his senior detective with an obvious frown on his face.
万有引力のことっすか？
Am I about to get schooled over Newton again? Law of universal gravitation. A law discovered by Isaac Newton, yes, stating that all matter, energy, and anything that has mass has a force that attracts other things with mass. The force of attraction becomes stronger the heavier the two selections of matter are, and becomes weaker the greater the distance is between them. It also applies to the gravitational force exhibited by Earth and other planets. There is a famous story which claims Isaac Newton discovered universal gravitation when he saw an apple fall from a tree, but it is no more than a myth. Middle school science class all over again. Fun times.
よく知ってるじゃねえの。さすがいい大学出てるだけあるな。
Suwa grew discouraged in response to Ban's slightly mocking tone.
あいにく大学じゃオカルトは勉強しなかったっすけどね。
オカルトじゃねえよ。世界には引力がアンバランス化してる地域ってのが何か所かある。
アンバランス化っすか。
グリコが楕円を描いたのもその影響ってこった。GE レートって呼ぶらしい。
GE レート。
ああ、正式名称は何だっつってたかな。グルバケーショングラリッシュエラ
Gravitational effect?
引力ならグラビテーションじゃないですか。グラビテーションエラーレート。
おお、そうそうそうだ。 Gravitation error rate.
Gravitational error. Well, I mean, I was basically on the right track, even if I wasn't completely correct.
直訳すると万有引力の異常値ですか。
物理学の辞典を調べりゃ載ってるはずだぜ。
載ってたっすかね。
The GE rate, an imbalance that contradicts the law of universal gravitation. Discovered by Isaac Newton, the law of universal gravitation is a fundamental force of nature that acts between all forms of energy and matter, i.e., anything that contains mass. It is commonly believed that a great number of strata layered upon the Earth's surface played a large part in this law. A typical example of something that disturbs local areas would be lava beds. This phenomenon can be found at the foot of Mount Fuji, Aokigahara, also known as the Sea of Trees, where there have been several recorded instances of compasses becoming unusable. Studies have also shown that fossil beds, particularly rich in iron and calcium, are another type of stratum in which magnetism is repelled. Adding on to the previous factors, magnetite is also believed to have a particularly strong influence on gravity. Magnetite, a type of mineral that is used as a material in magnets. It is black in color, has a metallic luster, and the crystals have an octahedral shape. It's been a while since I looked at an octahedral shaped object. I'll have to consult that later, see what it looks like. If magnetite, a naturally occurring magnet of an octahedral crystal structure, were to be found beneath the Earth in a quantity large enough to warrant being recognized as a dike, it would be as if the ground itself were a magnet. This would then result in an extremely high chance of the area producing minute gravitational deviations. The GE rate is a measurement of the gravitational values in a region in which such values have been distorted by the previously mentioned geological strata. When Bond's explanation concluded, the two men who had been walking the entire time were just exiting onto Dogenzaka. The scenery surrounding them instantly turned bright and dazzling.
渋谷の平均 GE レートは世界でもトップクラスらしいぜ。地面に置いたボールが一人でに坂を登っていくようなケースもあるらしい。
マジっすか?
Now that is something I would like to see. Suwa, who'd been listening in utter silence up until now, showed a surprise of a slightly exaggerated tone.
まるで SF 映画の世界っすね。
お前の好きなな。
自分は小難しいのは嫌いっすよ。壮大なスケールの映画がいいっす。
知らねえよ。
先輩の説明はすごくもっともらしいっすけど、なかなか信じられないっすよ。GE レートなんて聞いたこともないっすし。
But what I want to know is what does the GE raid in Shibuya have to do with the crew of fiction murder?
てめえの無知を一般論として語るな。デカに必要なのは事実を客観視することだぞ。
はあ。でも。
What Suwa said was equally true. The research into the GE rate was minimal, and certainly was not something that would be taught to an everyday college student. Bond himself had not even been aware of it until a few weeks ago.
そもそもまだ肝心の答えを聞いてないっすよ。渋谷の重力がアンバランスだとなんで若者が引きつけられるんですか？
引力と人間ってのは意外と因果関係があるってことだよ。お前、生き物のバイオリズムは月の引力に関係してるっての知ってたか？潮の満ち引きだけじゃねえんだぜ。
ウミガメの産卵には月の影響があるらしいってのはどっかで耳にしたことがあるっす。
ああ、必ず満月の夜に産卵するってやつだな。 だがウミガメだけじゃねえ。他に有名なのだとサンゴが産卵するのも満月の夜だ。
ああ、海の中が雪降ってるみたいになるやつっすね。
満月の夜は引力も強くなってるって科学的に実証されてんだ。当然人間にもその影響は及んでる。
人の出産にもってことっすか？
And there's a fun idea. Gravity is simply. Actually, never mind.
出産だけじゃねえよ。バイオリズムって言ったろ。普通の生理現象はもちろん、交通事故や事件、病気、食欲とか性欲とかにも密接なつながりがある。興奮すると頭に血が上ってるって言うだろ。あれは月の引力に引っ張られてるんだよ。
そりゃ極論だと思うっすよ。まるで個々の感情なんて関係なくて全部月のせいだって言ってるようなもんじゃないっすか。
そこまでは言わねえがな。集団心理って言うだろ。この町に来た途端に楽しい気分になったり、ちょっと無茶したくなったりするかもしんねえんじゃねえの。ニュージェネの一連の事件に対する反応だったそうだ。この町でそのニュースを見た連中は大抵反応が同じだ。どいつもこいつも楽しんでやがる。自分だけは被害者にならないって気持ちだ。対岸の火事を眺めていい気になってる。
I think we've definitely observed as much in the previous episode. Actually, no, it was the one before that.
そういう集団心理も GE レートのせいってことっすか？
可能性としてはありだろう。渋谷に来たら楽しい気分になるってのが若いやつらの頭の中に無意識に刷り込まれれば、
若者がこの街に惹かれる理由になるってわけっすね。
Suwa really is a fast learner, Ban thought to himself, impressed. The junior detective was still young, but that part of him truly was worthy of praise. In addition, what set him apart from other young people was that he did not just follow his seniors blindly. Whenever he had a question, or whenever he thought something did not make sense, he would always voice it, despite the fact that he was a junior in name.
GE レートについては一応分かったっすけど、それでどうやって犯人を探すんですか？もし GE レートに影響されて今回みたいな事件が起きたってなら、何百年も前から似たようなことが起きてないと変なんじゃ。
そいつはこれから調べりゃいいさ。専門家がな。
先輩は調べないんすか？
俺はデカだぞ。
Bond smirked from ear to ear.
調べるのはニュージェネのことだけだ。そのために今日はわざわざ仕事サボって現場の GE レートを測ったんだ。もしこれまでの一連の現場の GE レートが異常を示したなら何を意味すると思う？
まさか。
Suwa's eyes went wide, and he stopped dead in his tracks. It seemed as if he had realized what Bond was trying to imply.
事件は GE レートが異常を示している場所で起こるってことっすか？だとしたら次の事件が起こる場所をある程度予測できるんすね。
まだそう決まったわけじゃねえよ。それをこれから調べんだ。
There was something lurking within this city. Something yet unknown, hidden deep beneath its flashy exterior. Perhaps it was akin to Pandora's box, something not meant to be touched by the hands of men. Thoughts such as these pervaded Bond's mind as he watched the pedestrians file down the streets of Shibuya.
理想度もまだその意志による導き。
And very interesting theory you got there, Detective. Not gonna lie. A box given to Pandora's box, a box given to mankind by the gods in Greek mythology. The people were told never to open it, but a woman named Pandora gave in to her curiosity and opened it anyway, unleashing the many calamities held inside upon the world. It is said that the only thing left remaining in the box was hope. As soon as I heard those words, I knew I couldn't take it anymore. Fess had been going on and on about all these things I didn't care about, all while continuing to dodge what I'd actually asked her. I couldn't possibly care any less about some greater will, or why Shibuya attracts young people, or whatever else. There was only one thing I wanted to know.
ディソードはどうすれば手に入る
Mustering up my courage, I asked Fess that question.
教えてよ
Without changing her aloof expression, Fez gazed down at the D-sword she was holding. Despite how gigantic the sword was, she seemed to be handling it with incredible ease. Maybe she just had an absurd level of physical strength or something.
教えられることじゃないわ。
Why is it that you'll go on and on about all this random shit, yet you can't tell me the most crucial thing I need to know?
見つけなくちゃいけない。自分自身。方法なんて私にはわからない。
You don't know. Then how in the living fuck did you get the D-sword you're holding in your hand right now?
ただ、理想度は力を持つ人のみにしか映せない。
So, in other words, those without power couldn't see them. Yes, it's just like what Sena had been telling you, which you seem to be very intent on not paying attention to. But I could see it extremely clearly. But then, what did she mean by the power? Was she saying that I had supernatural powers? Like what the two Fesses in front of me had?
君には私の剣が見えているでしょ。それがいいんですよ。一つだけ。
If Shogun and Yua were destroying my life because of it, then I didn't want this stupid bullshit power. But I still did want a D-sword, because it'd grant me salvation. Fess had said so. Stuff like the greater will and the reason why Shibuya attracted young people made no difference to me. I didn't want some random power, nor did I want to be roped into all this BS in any way, shape, or form. But in order to escape the clutches of Shogun and Yua, I had to get my hands on a sword. And thus, get yourself roped into this BS in some way, shape, or form anyway. Come on, man. You're not thinking this through.
感じて世界の選択した意志。
But Fess's answer was as ambiguous as every other damn thing she'd said. Biting my lip, I tried desperately to think of any way I could extract information from her. But as a person who was terrible at talking to 3D people, I couldn't think of anything that'd be effective at all. I tried to pull from my bank of eroge situations, but everything that came to mind was fairly unsettling, such as slipping her an aphrodisiac, tying her up, or imprisoning her. Man, I may or may not be extremely fucked up. Understatement.
君、名前は
Fess turned her back to me, and slowly began to walk deeper into the tunnel.
私は岸本綾瀬。
Wait a minute! I just remembered something. Sena wanted Takumi to go to her whenever he came across an error. Is the error that she was telling him about these gravitational errors that Ban was just discussing? If that's the case, then Bond's theories might actually really be on the money after all. When she said that, I realized that we still hadn't introduced ourselves to each other yet.
Nishijo, Takumi.
I couldn't see Fess, Ayase's expression from where I was. Why she was laughing, I didn't know.
また会いましょう、匠。
Ayase was moving farther and farther away. I fearfully turned my head to see what happened to the other Ayase, only to find out that she had disappeared without a trace. Had she literally disappeared? Or had she just walked out of the underpass? Ayase had said that the other Ayase was a delusion. Maybe that was the power of the D-Sword. I returned my gaze to the inside of the underpass. And right as I did, I saw that Ayase was going up the other staircase, which was about 50 meters deeper into the tunnel. Eventually, her figure disappeared completely. And now, all that remained was the eerie silence of the underpass. I wasn't brave enough to yell after her. I was too exhausted to run after her, and I was overwhelmed with the feeling that I wasn't worth the trouble. In the end, all I could do was return home as cautiously as I could, making sure not to be spotted by Yua or the police on the way. Wow. So, the errors that Sena is looking for must be these gravitational errors that Bond was speaking about. Is Sena... I wonder... Since all the new gen murders that we've seen so far might have taken place in these areas where these gravitational errors are strong and in abundance, is Sena trying to stop any additional murders from happening by trying to predict where the next possible murder site might be based on these errors? Go in there herself. And I don't know, skewering the culprit with that D-Sword of hers. Because I don't think she's the culprit herself. Because otherwise, if that is how the culprit is choosing the locations of their murders, then it wouldn't make sense for Sena to be the culprit. Because, well, if she could find these errors herself and set up the murders, then why would she need someone like Takumi to find errors for her? And also everything that Fess has just explained to us. Everything relating to this greater will. What attracts people to Shibuya. It definitely seems to tie into these gravitational errors, for sure, in some capacity. I wonder if this Project Noah that this Nozomi group is setting up here is also using these gravitational errors for whatever it is that they're trying to do. Along with that VR research that we just learned about not too long ago. What if the VR research, its effects, what if the effects of VR research can be boosted by areas with strong gravitational errors in some fashion that I don't understand yet? Or maybe, or rather, what if VR technology can use these gravitational errors to basically send signals to other people who may be in these areas where these GE effects are strongest, and thus send them mental images, or delusions rather, and thus take control of other people's senses, brainwash them, remote control them, whatever. I'm not sure I'm really making a whole lot of sense here, but Shogun appearing to us in the manner that he did, the new gen murders themselves, VR research, and now GE errors, possibly same errors that Sena's been researching. Power of delusions and delusions manifesting. I think I get it now. It's only in the areas where these gravitational errors exist the strongest, where things like D swords or Sena's chain or the Fess wearing the swimsuit, where delusions like that can manifest in reality, because the gravitational error effect within Shibuya is strong enough to help those things manifest. Which then begs the question, is Nozomi trying to actively take control of this effect? Probably is, even though I don't have any confirmation just yet. I got a lot of stuff to think about, that's for sure. A lot of stuff to keep track of. Hopefully I can remember it all the longer I keep going on. I think I'm going to go ahead and end things here. So, we had 2 episodes in a row where we've had some very interesting info dumps dumped on us. But I think I'm starting to get a general idea of what's actually going on in Shibuya now. Even if I'm not 100% clear on the exact details on how it's being done. And I'm very, very interested to learn more. So, maybe the next time we come back, we'll get even more info dumps that could help answer some of these questions, or explain or prove or disprove some of these theories that I have. Anyway, with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this latest episode of Chaos Head Noah. If you did and you want to see more content from me, feel free to hit like and subscribe. I will see you all next time. Take care.